Ronald, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. Great to see you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here. Everybody who is attending the conference, who's watching this today, will have received a little program to explain who you are, but I just want to kind of go over a few things.
Okay.
So, teacher, coach, mentor, Olympian, rugby world team organizer, CEO, business developer. Is there anything that I'm missing that you haven't? Oh, author to be. Right, here's the script. Is there anything that I'm missing that you haven't done?
I don't know. It'll come out. It'll come out as we talk, I'm sure. Well, I'm happy to be here. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff we can learn from one another.
Mm-hmm. So, going into the questions, why do you think people use sports so often as a metaphor for business?
Gee, that's an interesting one. I think about there's a whole romance to sport that is attractive, that it seduces people. The razzmatazz that goes with sport. You're on the field. You have to make quick decisions. You have objectives you want to achieve. Sometimes the tide turns against you. How do you deal with that? How do you turn things around? How's your communication within the different departments on the team? And then there's the fanfare that goes with the media and the crowd screaming your name and cheering and shouting. There's all that romance that goes with it. I guess what some people don't understand is the down and dirty of it, but that comes out much, much later. But it's easy to tell a guy, hey, you're my champion, you're my captain, you're my this, you're my that on the field. And you feel, yeah, this is great stuff. I think I love this.
But why business specifically? Why do you think that people talk about winning and the metaphor of winning in sports and translating that to business?
There are certain principles you learn on the sports field, which you can carry into business. Like, for example, if you want to play rugby basically there are 4 principles. They're go forward, support, continuity, pressure. For someone who doesn't know that, you think that rugby is just a mess, just like business is just a mess. But you get onto the business field or the sports field, and in rugby, your first objective is to go forward. You must be going forward at all times, whether you're attacking or you're defending. When you're in business, you're thinking about stuff like that. How can I make the next step? Where do I go forward? Where do I hold back? What do I attack? What don't I attack? And then there's the support part of it. Let me try and do an illustration here. You have a business plan. You present it to your board. Your board says, that's a great idea, but what happens next? You've got to have people research in the background, your research and development department, your marketing department, your finance department. They have to support you. And then as that support goes, then you've got to keep on with that pressure. So the 4th principle is continuity. How does it keep moving forward? As you come up with your ideas, you can't stop there and say, hey, I'm done. That's it. What next? Right? So you're addressing this new market as a businessman. Once you penetrate that market, then what next do you do? Right? You can't stop there and say, I'm here now, so hey, buy my stuff or read my book or whatever. And then that continuity introduces pressure. And that's the pressure you put upon yourself as a businessman or as a business entity. What do we do next? Well, first, people have to listen to you. People have to respect you, but you have to listen to them as well. Now, when you're on the rugby field and you're playing, there's all sorts of information that's coming to you from off the field and on the field. Now, rugby is a little different from, I say, American sport, because American sport, you have all these timeouts and stoppages in game for TV and stuff. When you get on the rugby pitch, you're playing for 40 straight minutes. So you've got to find ways of getting information to you. So I'm looking for a guy who can communicate with people as he's, I guess, in the middle of the mix fighting, or she's in the middle of mix fighting, trying to achieve playing her part of the field, but you're also getting information, disseminating it and figuring it out. So are we going to attack left? Are we going to attack right? Are we going to go forward? What do we do? Do we hold back now? Depending on where the ball is, depending on where the game is, depending on what part of the pitch we're on, depending on what part of the game we're in. Is it the first half, second half, last 10 minutes? Last 2 minutes, is it 2 minutes to the end? You basically have to be someone who thinks on his feet or her feet all the time and get all this information and make a decision and then stick to it, because you can't halfway through say, well. Women are different, but the leadership aspects are still the same. It's just the way we approach it as men and the way we approach it as women. Men are more, one might say, confrontational or more aggressive in their leadership abilities or approach. Women are more, one might say, empathetic. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but their approach is gentler, right? They're just as hard, just as focused as everything, but their approach is gentler. So where a female captain, a woman captain might say, would you like to do this? Right? The male guy will say, you're going to do this. It's the same thing, but just the way they say it is totally different.
Do you prefer coaching men to women or the other way around?
It's hard to say. I liked coaching the women because they taught me the game afresh. Coaching men is interesting because they've been involved in sport. Many of them have been involved in different sports all their lives. So their skill levels, their aggression and stuff comes out naturally. With women, you almost have to teach them to be aggressive because they're not, in that respect, that naturally aggressive. But once they know what they need to do, then you can, I don't know, train the aggression. Okay, there are four. First thing is there's a lot of risk assessment that goes into this. You need to look at the market that you're getting into. Maintain awareness of the market. How competitive is it to you? You know, I'm going to play X down the road. I'm going to play X next week, etc. What are they doing, and what am I doing to prepare for that? The business leader is doing that as well. You don't just go into the market and say, I'm here. You need to know what the opposition is doing, what the competition is doing. Opposition in meaning opposition on the rugby field, but in business, I guess you'd call it competition.
Yep.
That's one. Then you look at opportunities. What opportunities do you have for expansion? How do you expand? What do you need to do? Do you get more players in? Do you join another league if you find what you're playing in is not good enough? How do you prepare yourself to get there? Right? Each one of you is doing the same thing because you can't play the same people over and over and over again. You need to go a bit further and further afield. And at the Blaze, we did that quite a bit. We expanded, looking forward, going. Industry developments, right? Law changes. In rugby, it would be law changes. That's an industry development. So now, if X happens, they call this. In the Super Rugby this year, they introduced the drop goal from the goal line.
Yep.
Which was a new thing. And then they introduced captain's referral. Some people hated it, some people didn't like it, some people loved it. And that's a thing that you've got to appreciate as well. So running your business, you've got to think about that as well. What things are happening in your business that will work or not work? And one of the last ones is you need to set measured and achievable goals. Sometimes we do things we set goals that are too high and too far for us. They've got to be simple because the little victories add up to the big ones. First of all, if you take professionalism to mean money, right? So being paid to play, let's term that a professional. But I think earlier on, before people actually paid to play, they were professional in their approach in many instances. The differences in rugby from the amateur level where you're not paid to play to the professional elite level, a lot of it is just to do with resources. So you have more people with specific roles at the elite level than when you are at the amateur level. So when we were at the Chicago Blaze, we were everything. We did all the fixtures, we did the coaching, we did the training, we did the fitness, we did the fundraising. You know, hey, Fred, you're washing the jerseys this weekend. Right. Who's marking the field? Who's doing that? You're calling up guys. Why aren't you coming for practice? Etc. So you're doing all that. And as you rise through the ranks, you get more and more people who are dealing with those things. So my role now at that international level was more or less setting the strategy, more or less setting the focus. This is where we want to be. And to achieve this, I need all these things in place. So now I have a technical team, I have a management team, I have the actual players, I have fundraisers, I have marketers, I have all that stuff. And everybody has to do their work and feed it into me. And then I say, okay, here's where we're going to go based on the information that we received. So I'm continually chopping and changing as we go along. But having done that all myself, right, with the help of people like you and other guys as well, sitting on tackle bags in smelly changing rooms and stuff, trying to figure things out. What do we do next, right? So I saw Joey limping. Do you think he can play the next match? Right? At the international level, I give that to the medical team. You check this guy out because he's critical to our engagement this weekend. Is he or is she able to play? That report comes back to us, then we'll make a decision based on that. At the amateur level, many of the times we're running on emotion and heart. And it actually works in business as well, because if you're a small one-man business or small two-man business or woman business, you're running these things by yourself, right? And the bigger you grow as an organization, you get more and more people coming into it, right? And the challenge now is all these guys come in and they have different ideas from yours. Now you've got to decide, do I listen to them or don't I? What am I looking for? First of all, let's talk about, if you're talking about leadership is intangible. You can't touch it, right? You can see it, you can feel it, you can see it in action, but you can't package it and put it in a box and say, here is leadership. This is how it is, right? So when I'm looking on my field and the team is playing and we're in quicksand basically means one thing goes wrong, another one goes wrong, another one goes, so we're sinking. We've got to figure it out quickly. How do we stop the sinking? How do we stop the rot? What do we need to do? So there are all sorts of ingenious ways of doing it. Somebody fakes an injury, you have call a timeout, you do all sorts of weird things to stop and think, or maybe not even think, just stop, right? Take a deep breath. How do we talk to one another at that point in time? A rugby team is always talking to each other, right? You're always talking. Information is always flowing back and forth between different parts of the field, different roles, who's seeing this, that, and the other. A rugby team that's playing silently, or any sports team that's playing silently, is a team in trouble. Because at that point in time, all you're thinking about is your own survival.
Right.
So crisis management in the board as well is the different departments have to keep talking even as the crisis is unfolding. Define what their roles are. Your role is this, your role is this, your role is this. It's in a spec, you can say command, manage, lead. There are 3 ways you can do it. Command, manage, lead. Command is a situation that you're now in charge. That's where you take the CEO captain's role. Stop. I'm going to tell you what to do, right? Don't do anything unless I've told you to do it. So everyone follows whatever edicts you lay down. The second one is manage, right? The manage is now everyone has a role. Right? We know what the roles are. We all know what we're supposed to do. So you do your job, I'll do my job. Stop thinking about the next guy. Stop thinking about the guy in the next room, right? You do your job. That's all you need to do. And then lead is when you get into a situation that none of you have been in before, like the pandemic right now. So when it broke out last year, what do we do? And then you get ideas from everybody, put them in together, turn it around, mix it, call it out and say, this is the way we're going to do. At that point of lead, then everybody's got a say, but they realize they're putting their ideas in a pot. Now you've got to, I guess, filter them and figure out what's the best way to go. I think experience is a bit overrated. You walk into a place and I've got 10 years of experience, right? But what experience do you have? Are you experienced doing the right thing or are you experienced doing the wrong thing, right? So you've got this skill, right? And this guy's got this experience, but the experience could be wrong for the job that you're looking for. So it doesn't quite help me, right? But a lot of the time we'll just say, I got 10 years experience, I got 15 years experience, but how does that help? How does that build into the company? It's almost like this 10,000 hours rule, right? That Malcolm Gladwell wrote about in his book Outliers. And then he changed his mind a bit about that about 2 years ago, when it's not just 10,000 hours, it's 10,000 of hours of directed practice or directed experience towards something specific as opposed to just 10,000 hours. I guess identifying what you want from the beginning and working your way towards it. You develop a process of how you're going to do things. So you walk in and you say, okay, I'd like to go to the Olympics. How long is it going to take us to prepare a team to go to the Olympics? What do we need to do? So you're looking at the market, right? What are the opportunities in the market? What's going to work against us? What works for us? Look at your own people as well. Do we have the capacity, the capability, the skill, the mindset to actually get there? Because we do want to get there. But how long is it going to take us to build to get there? Do we have the resources to build this plan? What is it going to take? How do I convince my board that this is the best way to go? Because am I reaching too far? Or are they comfortable just being here, at the middle and go for the low-hanging fruit everywhere they go? And I say, we can actually be better than this. Now, the bigger challenge is the higher you go, the more it is required of you. So maybe that's why we're comfortable. Some people are comfortable playing at this level, right? I remember when we were at the Blaze at some point, and you actually gave me that survey that I did. And some guys actually told me, we'll never, ever get to play at Twickenham. Right? We're basically weekend warriors, because now that we're moving into Division 2, Division 1, it means that you're going to require more of us. I'm not prepared to actually get there.
Right.
Right? Because once we do Division 1, that means we're going to go into the Super League after that. And then you're going to require a lot more of us at that point. So do you have the people willing to ride with you on that? So as you develop, you're shedding people and getting new friends. You're getting new people who want to play at a much higher level. You've got to take it on yourself. Much as we're striving to achieve the next level, you've also got to be prepared for the worst. Now, one of my challenges was, and that question of one of my biggest failures, I've struggled with that for a bit because I can't quite know. There's so many I can pick and say this actually wasn't very good or that wasn't very good, is how do you prepare people for failure? We rarely do prepare people for failure, right? We're preparing to win. Witness the All Blacks in 2007 when we all thought they were going to win the World Cup, and then they lost to France in the quarterfinals. Yep. Some of them went into a 2-year depression because nobody knew that could ever happen, right? So you've got to prepare people for failure as well, but it's not something that you publish on the notice board and say, hey, you guys, if we fail, this is what we're going to do, because you have to get people to go through a process. Right? And as a leader, you've got to tell them, as we failed together. It is not you. So everybody's got to believe we're in this together. You're not gonna, hand in your resignation today and then tomorrow you sign up with another company and there you are, brand new CEO of a more successful or another successful company, and that one's going down the tubes. Right? Your people, your team has to believe that you are with them, whether they shine or they're not shining. Right? And that way you build a trust, because leadership is based on trust. So the crash happens and you sit with them around the table, lick your wounds, everybody cries, have a few drinks and everything. And then you say, okay, guys, that's it. Let's start again now. What do we need to do? We all succeed because we fail. The importance of failing is you have to learn from that. If you don't learn from it, then it's a complete waste of time. We can't talk about winning because that's what you set out to do. But you need to, and I know we've all failed, we've all fallen down at some point. The difference is that we've all picked ourselves up, dusted ourselves off and said, okay, I'll start all over again. But I have a lesson I've learned. I'm not going to do that again, or I'll go a different route to get to wherever I'm going. At the amateur level, part of the challenge is one of the biggest mistakes I made at the Blaze was at a critical point once I changed the team. We'd been playing with this team for the whole season, won all our matches, we're doing really, really well. And then we got into the playoffs.
We brought Cement and Numel back.
And we all thought, and eventually it was my decision at the end of the day. And I took a couple of guys off the field, people who had played all along.
Yep.
Right? And then it was like, well, they're never that good anyway, and they were just whatever. But, they had grown into their roles. And then there was all this pressure on us at this point in time. Everybody's thinking, but these guys are not good, these guys are not good. And I took them off. And I think that was my biggest mistake. Because I brought in new guys who didn't know the ebb and flow of how we played.
Yep.
Right? I knew they were better players, but they were not good for that point in time. I honestly think if we had kept them, think about that game many times over, and I wish we could play it again.
The Indianapolis game?
Yes.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'd never have taken those guys off and say, look, we're going to sink or swim with you. And that's one of the challenges that we face, that you walk into a place and people have been working, and then you're tempted to bring in an outside guy, consultant, who shows up with fancy drawings and, things flashing all over the screen, etc. If we do this, that, and the other, and you say, yeah, that's the way we go. But the guys who've been working on it, you tend to ignore them. A leader is always valuable. I mean, vulnerable. You're valuable, one hopes, yeah. But you're always vulnerable. Always, always, always. That much, it comes with the job. From the day you start, you're a brand new CEO, you show up and everybody, oh, I heard you did this. Right? So you're going to do that here again? Oh, I heard you went to this company and fired everybody, so you're going to fire us? That sort of thing always comes up. Remember I said command, manage, lead. You need to develop a culture within the team where you always have that communication, so you never get to a position where you're all alone. So people they can have an idea of it's gonna come down to one of three decisions. We don't know which one he's gonna make. But it's either gonna be this one or this one or this one. And each one of them, they've got to be comfortable with you. They've got to trust you that you're gonna make the right decision. Right? And they also need to know that whatever decision you're going to make is for the good of the team. So you're vulnerable, yes. You may make the wrong decision. But the important thing is that your team is behind you. And they appreciate that what you did was for the good of the team. You weren't just looking after your own skin.
So there's a very interesting point I want to call you out on there. The team is behind you. This kind of metaphor, again, another military metaphor, going over the top, right? First World War, trench warfare, that the captain goes first, right? And then all the troops follow him, right? Is that what you mean by that? That you are putting yourself first and leading by example? By words, actions, those three principles that you talked about, so that people understand what the plan is and what the vision is? Because that's a communication moment as well, as a leading by example.
Okay, let me try and illustrate this. When I was running the Kenya Rugby Union, and the team traveled a lot, sometimes I went to them, sometimes I didn't travel with them or whatever. And it's a very volatile public organization with everybody has a view. You play this weekend and you win, everybody's with you. Then you play the next weekend and you lose, and social media is just, you guys, I don't know where you came from. Right? What the team knew, regardless of what people said, is when they came back, I'd always be at the airport to meet them. That was the one thing they could count on. That nobody else was going to be there. But if there was only one person, it would be me. Whether they showed up at 3 a.m. in the morning or at 6 p.m. in the evening or whatever. And I made it a point to be at the airport. And as they walked out of the tunnel with their bags, with their heads hanging low, it's me they saw first. When they lost. When they won, I stood in the back. Because there are too many people there who want to claim the glory and say, oh, it was my idea, and da-da-da. But the guys would, take all the pictures and everything, and then they'd ask, where's the CEO? I'd be standing by the bus. Right? So as they come, I'd shake their hands, good stuff, guys, get onto the bus and let them go. The team has to know you're going to be there with them. If that's what going over the top means first, if that's what it means, then that's what it is. They have to know. Because then they can take all the stuff that people bring to them. Yeah, because that's all we think about. And people do anything to win, unfortunately. Yeah. and they'll trample on people, they'll sell their mothers, they'll do all sorts of things because you want to get that bonus at the end of the day. You want to be regarded as a winner. First of all, winning becomes dirty because they're immediate rewards. We've made the rewards tangible. You know, here's a bright, shiny cup. Here's a medal that you have. Here's a bonus that you get. Here's a this. Here's a, slapstick, because it's all about let's encourage each other and stuff and everything. But like I said earlier, leadership is intangible. You can't quantify it. You've got to make it real for people, where people feel their, I don't know how you make it, intrinsic value within themselves. Mm-hmm. You've got to build that. People are important, and you have to create a framework for your teams, whether it's in the boardroom or it's on the pitch, to play in. And you can't do it all by yourself. You may have the most fantastic idea in the world, but you can't do it by yourself. And I guess you're only as good as your team. Yeah. But you can make that team to be as good as you want them to be based on how you work with them. It's crazy. You know, it's really hard to answer that question because you don't know what situation you're walking into. You can tell me, this is the company you're going to work for, or this is where you're going to, these are the people, they're young, they're vibrant, they're old, they're this, they're that, they work hard, they're focused on what they're doing, everybody's willing to go the second mile and stuff. But it's like telling my 82-year-old mother in Kenya to come to Chicago during winter and telling her it's cold. Her idea of cold and my idea of cold are two very different things. So she'll take what she thinks is her thickest sweater and say, don't worry, I've got this. Right? But a cold day in Kenya is like 56 degrees. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 56 degrees over here, we're wearing shorts, we've got T-shirts, we're having a ball. So when I look at that, I tell her, you can't come. She says, but why? I have my sweater, and in fact, I can buy another one. But cold is not the same. So it's really different for me, difficult to say, this is what my leadership style is. I guess I'd say I listen, I learn, and try and understand what we're trying to do. Mm. Yes.
I might answer it for you in a different way. And I'll use an example. I will never forget it, actually. The very first time we'd won, I think, 7 or 8 games on the trot, and people were getting excited about where we could potentially go with the Blaze. And you came into the changing room, lots of hullabaloo going on, and you didn't say a word. And it took everybody a good 10 minutes, like a classroom. It's interesting that your teaching skills, how long it took for the kids to understand that the teacher is there and the teacher hasn't said anything. That moment to me, I think we were playing Milwaukee that day. Black and Blue, I think they were called back in those days. Because you didn't say anything. Just your presence alone, we knew what to do. And I think that is something that you have an incredible sense of gravity. That's what I think people would say about you.
Well, that's nice. I don't think about myself that way. Most of the time, I'm probably just shaking in my boots thinking, what am I going to do? These guys think that I have all the answers, and I don't.
Yeah.
As a leader, you don't have any of the answers stuff. It's interesting you should say that, because now that you mention it, it's something I now started doing with all the other teams, whether I went to the Sirens or I was on the national team in Kenya or stuff. I never said a word, right? So it would be halftime, it would be end of the match or something, and guys would gather around, and I'd just stand there. And everybody talks, and then they'd all just keep quiet. And then you start speaking in a low voice. Because I think in the beginning it was, we're all really excited, so nobody's listening to each other. And what you have to do is bring people down to a level where we say, okay, Now let's start again. Let's be clear in terms of, yes, let's celebrate our victories, right? But we still have to be clear about what we need to do going forward. So I'm not saying that you didn't have a good time or you didn't play well. Yeah. But there's something else that's coming.
But it provides a certain level of expectation, unlike the rah-rah that normally happens. When we took the field that day, we knew exactly what the expectation were because you drilled it into us. We knew what it was. The other thing as well that I would tell you about you, or I'd say about you behind your back, is perspective. You're the only coach I've ever played for in rugby from the age of 7 or 8 years old all the way through when you said, that's it, Richards, you're done. And everybody in between. Most coaches stood by the sideline and they pace up and down screaming at you that you're doing things right, you're doing things wrong, more or less. You stand at the end of the field and don't say a word, but we can always see you. Like I said, as you're going forward, there you are, beady eye watching, and that's a completely different perspective, and that's a completely different way of coaching. We don't hear from you, or we didn't hear from you, I should say, until that halftime huddle. And again, bring the energy down, lay that plan out. Was that deliberate? Is that just a comfort zone thing? Is that putting yourself in that cocoon so that you can see things from a different perspective?
Well, I stood behind everybody because I also want to see what you're seeing. If I see on the side, I've only got one dimension, right? And I can't see what the field looks like in front of you. But when I stand at the end of the field and I'm watching, I can see what you're seeing. So when the ball comes out, whether it's going this way or going this way, I can see the opportunities as they are opening up. And I can shout or do what normally there was Mick who was walking on the side. So I'd tell him, this is what I can see. I can see a gap over here, over here. It is perspective. But I'm seeing what you are seeing on the field in the same, maybe from a distance, but the same things that they're seeing.
So how would you advise somebody in business then to take a different perspective? Because on a rugby field, like you said, it's tangible. You can see it. There it is. I can stand here or I can stand here. But in business, where do you stand to get a different perspective?
Well, in business, you've got to stand above everybody actually here, right? So you have a much more panoramic view of what's happening. What's this department, marketing, finance, PR, innovation, what is everybody doing, and seeing the jigsaw puzzle come together. So you have to have a much broader perspective, much broader view. These guys over here will not understand what these guys are doing. So you've got to be that link at some point. Maybe a little walk down the hallway and say, hey, what about this? But did you know that across the hall, this guy is doing this as well? Why don't you talk to him and see what happens? And then you encourage people to talk one to another and to talk to you as well. So you don't have to have formal meetings around the table where now let's discuss the business. If you do your job right, then your meeting, whenever you have your formal meetings, they're going to take 10, 15 minutes because basically everybody knows what is going on. It's when you don't know, when you don't have those meetings, then you have a board meeting, then you're thinking, oh God, we're going for 7 hours and this guy is just going to go off and off and off. And I mean, I've been in board meetings like that where you think it doesn't work, but I've been in other ones where they say 15, 20 minutes, we're done. We're actually just looking for an excuse to have lunch together. Yeah, because everybody's comfortable at that point.
Perfect. Ronald, always a pleasure, my friend. And I truly mean that, my friend.
Thank you.
My coach, leader. There's going to be a bit of confusion towards the end of today because here we are face-to-face having a conversation, but later on when we have the panel, you're going to be dialing in from Kenya, which is going to be fantastic. Please have a safe trip home. My regards to your mum, 82 years old, and everybody in Kenya who you
knows you
generously introduced me to on those couple of trips that we took a few years ago. I always appreciate it. It's always good to see you. And let's move on with the conference.
Thanks, Fred. I appreciate the time.